Welcome to Italics, television for the Italian-American experience. I'm your host, Anthony Tamburri. In this episode of Italics, distinguished Professor Fred Gardaphé speaks with actor, director, and playwright Frank Ingrasciotta. Ingrasciotta is best known for his featured roles in the award-winning films Figs for Italo and Brooklyn in July. He has appeared in numerous daytime dramas and is the writer and performer of his critically acclaimed off-Broadway one-man play, Blood Type Ragu. Since its off-Broadway run, Blood Type Ragu has had over 1,000 performances nationally and internationally. Ingrasciotta portrays over 20 characters, exploring his Italian-American identity, culture, and family through the lens of food, particularly Sicilian cooking and traditions. The play blends comedy and drama in a touching story about heritage and belonging.
Welcome to Italics, Frank.
Good morning, Fred.
This is Frank Ingrasciotta, the author of the one-man show, Blood Type Ragu, which has just come out in book form. So where does Blood Type Ragu come from?
Blood Type Ragu. It's a solo show, a one-man show. I went back to school as an adult to finish my degree, and it was in educational theater, and I started writing these stories. I had taken a playwriting class as part of it, and as the stories were developing, the professor had encouraged me to keep going. So from that point, I enrolled in a class, a solo performance class with other solo performers who were also writing solo shows, and started trying it out and just took on a life of its own.
And you had been in theater before?
Yes,
oh.
Yes. I was on One Life to Live for 5 years, and I was in the original cast of Godspell. I had done some directing, acting.
What did you play in Godspell, the original?
Oh, no, I was actually in that. That was sort of my apprenticeship to the theater. I was the stage manager for that show.
Oh, okay, all right.
So it got me my equity card, and it was a wonderful experience to be able to just watch how professional theater works.
You must have been a really young kid.
I was really young. I lied about my age to get the job, and I kind of, finagled my way into it, and I said I was 18, but I was only really 15 at the time, but I looked older for my age, so they hired me, and they got me cheap.
Fantastic. So you're working on this play, you're in school, and how does it get from the classroom to the stage?
Well, I pieced together the stories, then I did it in a famous performance space in the village called Dixon Place. And then I did it as a reading a couple of times. Then from there, artistic director of, at that time, the Belmont Playhouse in the Bronx, Dante Alberti, came to see it. And he goes, I'd like to produce this. So he was the first producer who came in. I was supposed to run there for 6 weeks, and I stayed for 6 months. Frankie! And then started getting bookings, and then after a number of years, it kept developing. You came to see it, I remember. And then a producer came in, and then I ran off-Broadway. And then after that, after my run there, I got good reviews, and I've run over 1,200 performances all through the country and in the United States and Mexico.
So let's give the people a sense of what this is all about. When I saw it the first time, I thought, oh my God, this is. He's been watching my family.
Yeah.
And I was very much interested in getting this to the Italian-American community, but this has moved beyond the Italian-American.
Yeah.
So it began really, who were your audiences, your early audiences?
A first-generation child of, second-generation child of immigrants, and what that child goes through growing up between two cultures at that time. Spanning from the mid-1960s to the 1990s. I wanted to tell a story about what an immigrant son experiences in that culture, and how, he's immersed in that culture, but how he's trying to adapt and find his own identity and sense of self between what's going on in the household and what's going on in the outside world, And, I had experienced, there was some volatility growing up between my parents. So, the role that my father didn't play, I took on, with my mother, and my father was old school, so very strict in his thinking. So how does a boy become a man, through that experience, a true man, a man with a sense of depth and a sense of openness? Because I've certainly seen patterns repeated. But so that's the more dramatic side of it. But there's also it's also very comedic. So it has a bit of a roller coaster ride as I navigate it.
No, I do love. I mean, it's the thread of humor that keeps you from crying. Well, actually, there is crying that happens, but it's the thread of humor that really, to me, is kind of keeps you from.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't believe this guy went through all this.
Right.
I always say that you're not a man in Italian culture until your father is gone, dead, gone. Your father left, or didn't refuse to play that part.
Right.
My father died when I was real young,
Yeah.
so this is why I connected so well with this play. But would you talk about some of the things that, some of the obstacles that come between father and son? Because until your father is gone or died, you're always going to be the boy.
Yeah.
You might talk about it in the context of your play. You don't have to talk about it in the context of your life. I'm not a psychiatrist. Okay?
Right.
You've probably been through all that, which is why this is so good. I don't know.
You have to do the work before you can get to the...
Exactly. Yeah. So in the context of the play, what are some of the things you made sure you put in there to show the struggle, the friction between father and son?
Well, my father didn't know how to express himself. It wasn't uncommon at that time. He didn't have a language. He wasn't given a language. He was a survivor, of World War II, and he wasn't given a language to speak, to know about, connection to sensitivity, or those kinds of things. And my mother was a force, but she was also very sensitive herself, and so it didn't connect. So as a boy witnessing that, I didn't know how to connect to him. He didn't know how to connect to me. Not that I don't think he loved me. He just we couldn't connect, and he had a temper. When my mother couldn't connect to him, she turned to her youngest child, made him the prince. And which is interesting dynamic, because it's very intoxicating to be the prince, but the dark side of that is you're asked to be a man before you are a boy emotionally. My mother had relied on me a lot. Then I came to understand, and I wanted to be the dutiful son, and I came to understand that it wasn't going to be a healthy life with relationships with me until I severed that emotional tie. Not to say I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore, or just to let it go. So that there's an image of that in the play, where I have an encounter with my mother, where we're in a public area and we're having it out, and she pulls a chair away from me, I pull it back, and we have this tug of war, and then it suddenly dawns on me that I don't have to pull it anymore, I could just let it go. So in that moment,
such a powerful image.
Yeah, and in that moment, I realized, that's not my job. That was my father's job. It's not that I won't support. It's just that I realized I just have to let metaphorically the chair go, and not play that role. It was on me at that point. Mm-hmm. So that's the more psychological side of the 22 characters. But then, very funny. I hope funny, but people have responded to the comedic parts. I mean,
what you're doing is examining the female side of the male.
Yes, yeah.
And when you look at the relationship between mother-sons,
right.
Sons are the only men
right.
that these mothers can trust.
Right.
They don't trust their husbands. They
Right.
might cheat on them.
Right.
They know about boyfriends. They know about all the other men they ran through in their life.
Right.
But the son, they can. And so
Yeah.
that's why.
Right.
They treat their sons better than their husbands.
Yeah, especially the son who gets them. You know, I was
Right.
in tune with her, you know, so in tune that like I could finish her sentences before she expressed them to me. She had what was called then, like when I was 7, a nervous breakdown, which I guess would be diagnosed differently these days. So the doctors, you know, they didn't put you on medication, but what they told her is go back to Sicily, you know, and spend some time in your native country. We couldn't afford the whole family to go. So she went just with me, and she left my brother and sister and my father behind. This was in the 1960s. It was a culture shock, because the way I was living here and the life I knew here was so different when I got there.
Could you read a little bit from that?
Sure, sure. So in June of 1966, at the age of 7, we arrived to my parents' hometown in Mazara del Vallo, Sicily. We step off the plane. Suddenly, all these aunts and uncles I had never met before come charging at us as if we were the Madonna and Child on a comeback concert tour after a 2,000-year absence. From the crowd of aunts, my father's sister Zia Bettina appears. Che fatto grande Lucaruso. Look how big he got. Come to our house for breakfast. We haven't seen you in 20 years, so now we want to sew you into our skin and wear you as a blouse. Food preparation was the umbilical cord to my cultural past. First, you must take a bunch of ancestral roots from Mazara del Vallo, Sicily, and let them flower. Let the families arrange to marry the seed of one Gaspare Ingrasciotta to the egg of one Maria Ballatore. Cut the roots from their stems to escape the World War II depression and marinate in transatlantic waters for 15 days. Place them in a 1949 New York melting pot and add 1 box of American cultural mix. Beat the two cultures together, adding sacrifice and hard work over the peasant stock. Reduce the mixture into a one-family home. Then, as a preservative, wrap the entire living room in 1 big plastic slipcover.
Are there future performances coming up? Anything?
Well, I did it in Canada. I've done it in LA. I've done it in New York. I performed it off-Broadway. You know, all over the place. Now what's happening with it is it just got published through Next Stage Press, and it's been licensed. And now I'm adapting it into a screenplay. So I'm in the process of spending my time writing that. I've been told many times that it's visual, and I see it as a film. So I'm gonna listen to what I'm hearing and open up the world, and instead of making it me playing 22 people, to give it a whole, you know, world of cinema.
So I want to talk a little bit about these 22 people that you play. How did you decide who to leave in and who to leave out, and who's your...
At the beginning, when I did it at the Belmont Playhouse, it was 2 hours. And then the second director came in, he goes, take out all the extra, make it about the Holy Trinity, you, your mother, and your father, and the people that are connected. So as a writer, that helped me to kind of hone it down. I mean, chickens were running through the street, you know, and my grandmother had no running water. So then when I was there, I witnessed my grandfather dying 2 days after we got there. That was very profound. And then when my...
Oh, what do you mean, what was it? They brought you in the room and he was...
And he was laid out in the living room. The family was around, a laid out dead body. And I remember the little children in the neighborhood looking outside through the shutters, you know.
Do you know why you were brought in as a kid?
To write this?
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid in my neighborhood, and when relatives were dying, they would bring the kids in. You would get the blessing of the dead.
Right.
It was supposed to be something that would help you, and it was also a way of, you know, not letting you see what death is.
Yeah.
As opposed to watching, like watching it on TV and watching the guys get shot and no blood, but and so, but it was a part of life, is what they were doing.
Yes. And they sang. I remember them singing, lamenting, like singing through their
keening.
Yes, keening. That was it. Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Then we come back to America, and my mother had claimed more of her independence. You know, it was during the time of Gloria Gaynor's "I Will Survive." That was her anthem. And
So the doctors were right. That trip did something for her.
so then it really got tough at home, and then they had separated, but never divorced. And it's funny because then my father, from the volatile man I experienced him as a boy, suddenly became like a remorseful man. I was moving him in a U-Haul truck, and he turned to me and he said to me, "I was a good father, wasn't I?" "You did the best you could, Dad." "Oh, Dad, it's okay. It's okay." And I looked at him and I saw his pain, you know, I saw his wounded inner child, you know, and all I could say to him is, you know, "You did the best you could," and then, which was true. And then he started to cry, and then I went, "Oh my God, okay, I get you, I get it," you know. So from there, then my mother started relying on me more than ever. So then I met my wife, Teresa, who happened to be Sicilian. Never thought ever in my life I would meet a Sicilian woman, because I had divorced myself from the culture that I had interpreted as, you know, crazy at that time. And we married here, and then there was another reception waiting for us in Sicily because there was family there in a town that was not too far away from her town. She goes, "Do you want to look up your family?" And I kept going like, "I don't know. I haven't seen them since I was 7," because what my parents did, they just excommunicated everybody. They stopped seeing everyone. So everybody just wondered what happened to these people, you know, because you didn't divorce, you know. So I went to the town, and I walked through the streets to find my aunt's house, and every church bell in town began to ring as I was walking. And when I arrived to the address of the house, the church bell stopped, and my wife said, "Your father's walking with us, he's celebrating you." So I was shaking, my hand was shaking, because I felt like I was carrying like the shame of the story, you know? And then my aunt answered the door, and I told her who I was, and she said to me, "You're the fruit peel of your father," where for a moment I thought it was him. And my uncle said, "Your father sent it to us with the letter he wrote of how proud he was of you." He was supposed to go there, and he never made it. He died 10 days before going there. So I just, to see that photo and to go like, he thought to do that, I couldn't connect. And I said, "You know, tell me, Zia, what was he like before he came to America?" He just went to another room and pulled out this picture, this beautiful 16 by 20 sepia photo of my father as a boy, you know. And he said, "You know, you walk the path of your father, you are the bridge. This is who you are, and that's just what happened to you. You take it home and know where you come from." We were like, everything just went, because to see the innocence, you know, my father's eyes, and to ask the questions, you know, and find information like what he was like when he was a boy, it was, I totally got it. But it only took me arriving at who I was as a man at that point for me to allow that to.
So the play then just becomes a path.
A path, yeah.
You know, from where you were to what you've become.
Right.
And your father probably never told you how proud he was when.
No. No, you know, you never got an "I love you." I think I got an "I trust you" once, which was a big deal for a Sicilian. But yeah. But that was. I mean, if you believe in the greater part of the life that's bigger than you, you know, which I do. There was a sense of that. It was my father coming back, I feel, to make it right, you know. And I feel a closer relationship to him now than I ever did back then. It's like I know him. And to live in his body every time I play the role is an amazing experience, living out his feelings.
Was your mother alive when you went through some kind of therapy at some point?
Yeah.
Was your mother alive at that time?
Yes, my mother was alive.
What was her reaction to that?
My mother, she knew I wrote something. She knew I wrote something Italian. By that time, she was on in years. She knew I wrote something about the family. But every time, like, you know, she expressed wanting to come, I would go, Ma, the stairs. You're not going to make it. There's a long staircase to go up. Oh, maybe I shouldn't go. Because I don't know if she would have, you know, gotten up and vocally said something from the audience, or if she would have gotten up and done it with me, you know, because she was very proud, you know, of what I accomplished, but I just never knew.
What about other family members who saw the play?
I reconnected not just with the family in Italy, but the estranged family in New York, because they heard about it. Their reaction was, now we get it. Now we understand. And it's funny because my mother was always with the, you know, the curses and the fattura, and she did this to us, they did this to us, you know. And I was thinking, you know, it wasn't them, it was us, you know. So I always thought that they were, you know, strange, but I realized, oh, it was us that was strange. And they said, oh, now we understand why there was such estrangement. We never knew what happened to you. And now we have a very wonderful relationship, you know, and I'm so happy to have reconnected with them.
It's amazing, you know, having taken that risk to take, when you put your life into art,
right,
and then you give it back through the audience, which looks at it sometimes as art, most times as life.
Right.
Then you begin to see things that you didn't see before you had written the play.
Yeah.
Because the idea of, you know, when I went into therapy, my mother said, oh, I think that's good that you're getting help. She says, just don't tell them anything about the family. You know,
right,
right. The whole purpose, and so I was in a room once with people like Diane DePrima, Maria Gillen, Tony Ardizzoni, other writers. We were at a conference, and we were talking about what we were working on, and we started talking about what we couldn't write.
Well, you know, Ed, there's a wonderful quote from Anne Lamott, the writer. She says, you know, if they don't like what they wrote about you, they should have treated you kinder, you know. You know, I learned, though, that if you really want to tell a story where people are going to resonate, you have to take the risk to speak the truth. And if you and I have had that kind of discussion when we write. It's like, you know, it's hard. You're shaking, you know, because there's something, you know, flowing out, because you know it's your truth, but it's scary.
Do you have a video, a one-man show video?
Yes, it could be seen, the full off-Broadway professional production can be seen on BroadwayOnDemand.com. So that's Broadway On Demand, and just type in Blood Type Ragu. And also, this the play itself is available at the Drama Bookshop, and or you can go into nextstagepress.com.
Right. So I thought before you go into the film with the 22 characters, for posterity to have that on video, so the play will be there.
Today, you walk the path of your father. You are the bridge.
You're looking into the history of a culture, you know, and what that's about.
I think the key to looking at what we do with Italian American culture is to look at what you have to overcome in order to be able to do it, in order to be an artist, in order to be able to talk about the things. Because first of all, if this stuff is not talked about in the class, in the family,
right,
all the contextual situation for your family is not talked about in your education.
right,
So nobody's talking about anything.
right.
So that's why we depend so much, you know, on the artists. And I think a lot of times Italian Americans don't really understand that.
But I wanted to tell a story, you know, as I said, that reflected a family dynamic and you know, and tell a different kind of story.
But it's one thing to write it, it's another thing to perform it. Were you performing it before? You were performing it before you wrote it, because you were telling people stories.
I wrote it, and then as I performed it, it's very different, the transition between a solo performer who writes it and then performs it, because it's two different art forms meeting. So when you start performing it, you go, oh, I don't need to say that line. I could just, a hand movement will take care of it. A look will take care of it. So it's a transition as an artist to figure out that world. Solo performance is kind of like an art all unto itself, because, you know, after an hour I'm on stage and I go, is somebody going to come out and relieve me? You know, because it's a ride, you know. So now it's to adapt it and open it up more to the world, you know, and selling it, you know, as a screenplay. I just want to have a tight story, a whole nother world too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of Italics. Wishing you all un felice, prospero 2026. I'm Anthony Tamburri. Arrivederci alla prossima puntata.